The gun debate has also divided Democrats somewhat. The Democrats running for governor, Dennis Kucinich, jumped right on calls for banning the AR-15.
Enough is enough. Enough is enough. We are not going to be silent anymore. We are going to be active. We are going to show people that we have the power to push back. We're going to show people that Ohio, the people of this state, can lead the way in an assault weapons ban. We are not going to let any of our children, again, have to face this kind of threat without anyone knowing that we have the power to change the dynamic.
Janetta King, Richard Cordray did not go as far as Dennis Kucinich. He wants universal background checks, bump stock ban, but no banning of the AR-15 or similar weapons. What's his strategy there? Why not go as far as Dennis Kucinich and get those far left Democrat votes?
There's a spectrum there, and I think those far left Democratic voters are Dennis Kucinich's. He's very comfortable in that space. He's always been, very consistent there. And I think, Rich is a different type of, Mr. Cordray is a different type of candidate.
Does it cause trouble for him in a Democratic primary?
I think that
for Rich Cordray, I mean?
Yeah. I don't think so. So in terms of this issue, I don't think this gun issue, because he did come out with background checks and support of background checks and others, I don't think it's a problem. Many people like to point out that in the past he, was someone who was supported, by folks in the gun lobby. But that was 10 years ago, and as we just said, so much has changed. He is one of those that has, been on the other side and have been impacted by these current events.
The one thing that he suggested, though, that I'm not quite sure I completely understand, he said he would create local gun trafficking task force and appoint a gun violence prevention czar if elected. And I'm not sure what the local gun trafficking task forces would do at the local level. I don't really understand what his point is there, except to spread around some sense of power about this. I don't get it.
Jim, how many working groups, task forces, czars,
blue ribbon
panels have you covered in your career?
Well, the longer my career has gone, the lesser of them I cover, because they just end up mostly not doing much. I do think, though, that I believe that, Democrats, unlike in the past probably, like I said, 20 years, are maybe start to think that gun control is not a net loss for us when we run on it. And if that becomes the case, it'll become more interesting that Democrats will start trumpeting these things rather than just keeping quiet. And I do think if Dennis Kucinich continues to push for a ban on the AR-15, it is going to force Rich Cordray to talk about it specifically more, and is going to push him one way or another. He's going to have to specifically address it if Dennis Kucinich and others in that race.
Mike Miller, what often happens is not that the NRA doesn't give to the Democrats, but they give a lot of money to groups to run attack ads against a Richard Cordray or against a Dennis Kucinich, and that has the same effect of supporting their opponents.
Sure. Well, the Kucinich thing bothers me for one reason, not what he said about the guns. I'm not sure what the answer to that is. I'm not smart enough to solve that problem. But I think some of that was just raw politics, internal politics. I mean, to accuse Cordray, which he did, as being the singular one person that led to the overruling of the laws in Cuyahoga County when the U.S. Supreme Court, I mean, to me, that's just playing politics. He takes this very serious incident and uses it to attack an opponent that to me is just
Cordray as attorney.
He's the attorney general.
He was defending
the state
law,
doing his job, and he gets blamed as if he's some sort of a wild person coming in. And to me, it just detracted from anything, in my opinion, that Kucinich said, because to me, it's politics, and it's not really going to the issue.
Yeah, and one thing I think Democrats need to be careful of if they're going to campaign on this is make sure you're going after the gun problem, not the gun owners. If the gun owners start thinking you're coming after them, this will become a net loss.
And I think it's also problematic for people to go after the NRA and then want to, be successful with voters, because the NRA brand means something very different to an average Ohioan. The NRA is in their communities doing gun safety training, working with the Boy Scouts. It's not this, lobby that, those of us in this business know them as. And so I don't think that's a winning strategy either. It has to be more about the policy and the candidate.
And it could be, the thinking is, with Donald Trump's unpopularity, the conservative Republican vote might be suppressed in 2018, Janetta. But if if gun rights becomes a big issue, that would energize the right, I would guess, and that would not be good news for Democrats.
Yeah, that might be right. You know, it's interesting, though, because Mike DeWine has a gun record of his own, and the NRA has not supported him in the past. And so I think right now in a primary, he's kind of keeping low. But, you know, when push comes to shove, you know, maybe they'll think he will be better than. But he's got some interesting dynamics himself.